Detroit say, yeah, fuck you, Ben Johnson. So hello and welcome to All Four Quarters, your one-stop shop for news, views, and overreactions to all things NFL. This week we will be starting our backup quarterback, as will, it would appear, half the league. So hey, we got Connor here and we got Sean.
Hello.
How are we getting on? How's tricks down in Cork?
Yeah, not too bad. Been doing a good bit of driving. I had 6 hours of driving prep this week. 3 sessions of 2 hours, which was it was good. No, it was good to kind of get intense,
Yeah.
kind of going around the 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 test circuit and the stuff. There's weird stuff like the entrance to the testing facility has been deliberately designed to test certain things, and if you don't know about them, you're likely to fail, and you have to. It's just
Mm,
there's a lot of stupid stuff like that that you have to keep an eye on.
cheeky.
Yeah. They've designed. They. I was like, my first time I was looking at it, I was like, this is really weird that they've designed this in such a bad way. And then it was like, the guy who was giving me the lesson was like, no, they have done this on purpose so that people have. There's like a series of different decisions you have to take, and you have to make the right one each time. About so like even pulling out, you have to stop three separate times because there's three separate things you have to take. You have to stop at the stop line, and then you have to stop before the footpath because you can't see enough of the footpath to assess it
Okay.
originally, and then you have to stop right at the point of the
Now you're giving all the
road
secrets
because when
away,
you
Sean. No
assess.
one needs to take lessons in Cork now. You've let them know.
Apparently, Cork has the worst passing rate in the country because of how crap the roads are
Mm.
all narrow roads filled with cars. Um,
Oh,
apparently,
fair enough.
the guys in Dublin make fun of the Cork people for having such a difficult test.
Fair enough. Well, look, get those excuses in early, I suppose. When's the test? Is it next week?
It was supposed to be next week, but I've rescheduled it now to 3 weeks' time, the 10th,
Okay, fair enough.
because my wife is off that week, so we'll get a lot of practice in before I have to take it on the Friday.
Ah,
So
excellent. Very good. Yeah, nothing quite
yeah.
as exciting over here. We're dog sitting for the weekend for my brother's dog because they were away off at a wedding, so we had two dogs going absolutely 90 around the house. So we had good crack and yeah, just
Was there much? You were talking about the dog pissing the last
yeah,
time.
he
Was there
still
much
does
of
a
that
bit of
going?
that now. It was better than it
Yeah.
has been, but there was still bits of it here and there. So kind of had to chase him around occasionally and find it. But no, overall it went very well. So happy days with that at least. And yeah, then watched some football, watched a bit of other sports, and yeah, it was kind of nice and relaxing now. But not a great start for my team, I will say, but it was a good match. We will be talking about it later on. But first, let's move in and have a look at all the news around the league. So we'll start with crime and punishment. What are they doing? Probably felonies. Tyreek Hill's back, and wouldn't you guess it, it's allegations about domestic abuse again. 8 incidents have been. Come to light as part of a divorce process. The NFL are investigating with an eye towards suspension. Tyreek Hill is currently kind of actively and very visibly unhappy in Miami. Tua was making comments after the last game about how he can't throw the ball far enough, but Tyreek Hill can stop, and maybe he should do that instead of complaining. There was a lot of talks about them looking to trade him. This will obviously cause problems for that as any kind of possibility, but yeah, like kind of this seems to happen once every 2 years on Tyreek Hill, right?
Yeah, I believe there was a legal he entered a guilty plea I think in college to a domestic assault, so that's like 10 years ago now, and then
Yeah.
there was a child abuse investigation about 5 years ago, and
Mm. Now he's
this
cleared of
one
the child abuse one. That was
yeah.
that was definitely cleared. But
Yeah. I mean, the various things that are coming out apparently shoving, hair pulling, locking his wife out of the house, spitting. There was
yeah.
a marijuana joint shoved in her face. Some of them have occurred at times she was pregnant. I mean, if half of these are true, the guys are just complete shithead.
Oh, he is. Yeah, and sure,
From the
like
sounds of it, yeah.
sure was didn't he have like multiple babies while married in the same year with different women and all this kind of stuff. Like it just seems like a mess to be honest. And
Well,
yeah,
yeah, he calls it a shakedown. He says it's all about damaging his reputation in the divorce proceedings,
yeah, I don't
which
know. It's
is
just
yeah.
like there's just there's only so many times. a boy can cry
Yeah,
wolf,
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
Uh,
No smoke without fire, as they say.
but yeah, sure. Look, we'll see how that goes. And to be honest, I think the main thing is it means you won't be seeing a sell off of that asset anywhere because I think no one really wants to touch that with a 10-foot pole at the moment, particularly if the price that it was rumored they were looking for him. The other one is LA Chargers defensive tackle Tyre Tart has been fined $12,000 for slapping Travis Kelce. This occurred in week one. The slap aired around the Twitterverse because all of the Taylor Swift fans apparently he went and mouthed off at Taylor Swift fans afterwards and then kind of brought a lot of that on himself. But yeah, it's an interesting one that they have a specific delineation between smacking and punching. That a punch would be an ejection, but a slap is a play on fine and 10-yard penalty, 5-yard penalty, something like that. But
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah,
just
he got the 15-yard penalty, but he was not ejected. I think so.
hmm
If he'd used a closed fist, he should have been ejected. So Andy
mm,
Reid, apparently Andy Reid was apoplectic. He was not ejected, but the rule was enforced correctly because he used an open hand and
yeah.
not a closed fist. It's a 15-yard penalty, but not an ejection.
Yeah, so apparently this stems from back in the day. You may remember, I think it was Deion Jones was quite famous for the slap move. That the slap used to be a move that defenders would use. And Deion Jones won't be he'd smack a guy and he'd basically turn his helmet around and then run past him. Like it was, they obviously have removed that out of the rules, but obviously haven't done anything to change how they are officiated. But yeah, whatever. Controversy corner. Interesting enough this week, Tom Brady, who we talked about previously about this in the offseason, how because he is a part owner of a team, but also is a broadcaster for Fox, has access to a lot of uh, meetings and team facilities and practices and things like that that other people wouldn't. And last year they had rules in place to stop him from being able to pass this along. So he was banned from a lot of these activities very quietly in the off season, and that's when we were discussing it. The NFL just decided, hey, look, it's Tom Brady, we'll let him do whatever he wants, and got rid of those rules. And people are starting to get rather annoyed. So Tom Brady was pictured sitting in the coach's room for Raiders versus Chargers, speaking with the offensive coordinator there, Chip Kelly, and yeah, Chip Kelly came out and said, "Yeah, this is normal. We talk 3 or 4 times a week, and I kind of get him to help me work on stuff and everything." And everyone is suddenly going, "Well, this is exactly why we had those rules in place, you know? Like this guy is getting to meet coaches, getting to see players, getting to go to locker rooms, like." And then he's just going and can just immediately pass his information on over to the fucking coaches of the team that he meets up with 3 or 4 times a week to talk strategy. And this is made even worse because the Commanders and the Bears are both teams that he's covering for Fox. And then within a week or two of him covering them for Fox and having all this access, the Vegas Raiders are then going to be playing them. So he's gonna like I just don't understand how the NFL is letting this go, and it's a terrible look for them. Like for Fox, if they paid him a load of money, I'm sure they'd be like, well, just get rid of your small minority stakeholding in the Raiders or whatever. But like this is a very bad look for the NFL.
Yeah, I think we all kind of suspected. I mean, when you heard about the rule first, you know the outsider might ask, well, why do you have these kind of rules? And now you see what happens when you don't have the rule and the problem that comes from it. So I mean, strictly speaking, I don't think he's broken any current rules. Owners are allowed to sit in coaches' booths. They are allowed to wear a headset. I mean, there's a
Hmm.
lot of stuff on social media at the moment of the new owner of the Colts being actively involved in things like that. He remains barred. He can't go to team practices. He can't attend in-person production meetings. He can't participate remotely. Like there's a lot of really weird stuff about this.
I thought that they got rid of all but two of those rules this offseason for him. That
Yeah,
he's not allowed at the team practice, but everything else was removed.
yeah, and it's. I mean, there's a lot of hair splitting. Like Pete Carroll is claiming he's not involved in structured game planning. They're more random and not formalized chats. And I mean, who's policing that? And in reality, how much do we believe that? I mean, the big thing is you're getting access to coaching decisions. You're getting access to a lot of information that you can use, and this is why you have these kinds of things. And even if there isn't, it's the perception of conflict. I think as much as anything
Oh
else.
God,
Like
yeah.
this is a league that's built upon. I mean, you think about the salary cap, and you think about how important competitive balance is for the league going forward as a thing. They have to be seen to be fair in all
And it doesn't help
situations.
that Tom Brady comes with an attached legacy of
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
instances
yeah.
of finding every edge and cheating and videotaping
Yeah,
and
I mean,
like
we're not that far time wise from things like Deflategate or anything like that. I mean, he has been known to at least bend the rules to the maximum level of bending, if not outright break rules
yeah,
before. So and he's probably the most high profile figure in NFL history. Like literally everybody knows who this guy is, and everybody, yeah, he's a very much a public figure that
yeah.
people that even casual people will know who he is. So
Yeah,
it's
the
obviously
the
this kind of
NFL
thing that
need
can
to do
explode.
something about this now. They need to sort this out because it's incredibly ridiculous that they are not, just saying, look, you can't. We have to bring back
I
the
mean,
previous blockers.
yeah, the problem is the money, right? So obviously Brady's got this massive, completely undeserved contract from Fox, and in reality, when he took up his ownership stake of the Raiders, he should have been forced to give up that contract.
Yeah,
That's my opinion, and but obviously there's just too much money involved, and he's too high profile a figure that the NFL they
he
tried
also
to
lost
fudge
loads
it.
of his money in crypto, so he did have
Yeah.
to try and rebuild that nest egg, and he got divorced.
Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, I can see it from his point of view, but he also did, it is breaking
Oh, it
a
is. It's
number of
ridiculous.
ethical rules, if
And
nothing
then,
else.
like you add into that, then because there's two sides of this as well that are incorrect. Because there's one which is the competitive NFL perception of this, right? And then the other one is the journalistic side. So if you're looking at this as any other journalist is meant to be in this, and they have access to the same things, like how is this guy being objective in those events? How is he showing any journalistic integrity if he's using these things as an opportunity to be able to find a competitive advantage for a team he has an ownership stake in? Like yeah, I think this is pissing off people on both sides of the divide between the ownership and the broadcast side, and I just think it's a terrible look.
I think at this point he's like I don't know if the NFL are strong enough in terms of bringing in new rules. I think from Brady's point of view, he's got to be the bigger guy here and find some sort of dignified way out of this. Either sell his stake in the Raiders or be willing to give up his
Yeah.
mega Fox contract because this is the problem. This is why there were rules, and even the rules themselves may not be enough to enforce what's going
Yeah.
on. Yeah, something definitely needs
I
to be
think I
done
think I
about it.
think this immediately following the whole them removing these rules in the off season specifically for Tom Brady and then to immediately be on national television doing this in week 2 is just it's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
incredibly stupid. We'll move on from Tom Brady and his cheating ways and we'll look at some extensions. So Dallas offensive lineman Tyler Smith got a 4-year extension. $96 million, dollars, 81 million guaranteed. That makes him the highest paid guard in the NFL history, surpassing Trey Smith of the Chiefs, I believe. And Green Bay wide receiver Christian Watson signs a 1-year, $11 million extension. So just kind of gives him a little bit more rope there. So I think like both of these make sense. It's expensive for Tyler Smith, but we see the problems that can happen if you don't have O linemen. This is kind of where it's going. Dallas finally getting out in front of one. I imagine the money they saved with the trade of Micah Parsons is what's freed up the money here, and at least they're not just continuing the same problem of waiting till the last second to sign someone. Like this will lock him down, and in 2 years' time, this will look like a very affordable guard contract if he continues to play at a decent level.
Oh yeah, I mean, if we've learned anything last week, if nothing else, about quarterbacks, is you need to have an O line to protect them, and if you don't, you're playing with fire. And the Cowboys have always been a team that has been built upon the strength of their O line. They've consistently drafted linemen quite high. Obviously, Jerry Jones likes his big guys that he can kind of put his franchise on, and someone like Tyler Smith, he's at least seen to the Cowboys as being worth that kind of money and being in protecting him. So it's completely consistent with how the Cowboys are doing, and in the context of the modern NFL, I mean, we rag on Dak Prescott from time to time, but he is an asset to the Cowboys, and certainly one that needs to be protected as much as possible. If nothing else, in the fact that he was last year he was injured and their season completely fell apart. So I think they know the value of what they have and what they need to protect.
Yeah, we had a couple of trades. New England have traded wide receiver Jalen Polk to New Orleans for a late round draft pick. So New Orleans get a seventh rounder in 2028. New England get a sixth rounder back for him. Yeah, he just hasn't really been able to catch on there. They drafted 2/3 wide receivers in that draft, and just Polk was low man on the depth chart. Hasn't really been able to break through. He had a couple of individual games that were good, so he might see a little bit more play time in New Orleans. But
Well, I
it's
mean, when
kind
he
of
recovers from his injury, like this is the one of the weird things about this is this guy who went on. has a shoulder surgery a month ago that people were saying was going to end his season or is very unlikely he's going to compete this season, and now he gets traded to another team. So I do find the timing of it a little bit strange. I mean, I guess maybe they're moving cap around. We know the Saints are, they're in cap hell and trying to find answers to various things. So it's a bet on a long term upside on a rookie who, yeah, I mean, the numbers are not particularly flattering to Polk in his rookie year. I mean, I think he struggled to get more than 10 yards a game. I
Mm.
mean, it's the kind of thing where I don't think he's likely to last that long in the league if he doesn't step up. So
Yeah,
I find it a little bit strange as to why this is happening now and as to why he is considered to still have some upside. I don't necessarily think as a Pats fan that I saw it. I think I believe he was at there's I can't remember which website. There was some website that voted him the worst wide receiver of 2024 based on his performance. So, I
yeah.
mean, when
Did,
he
did,
comes back, sure, we'll see how it goes. But obviously, the Saints are in such a bad place that another bad wide receiver probably isn't going to make much of a difference at this
Look,
point.
The Saints are in cap hell. They're in cap hell next year as well. I believe they're currently 23 million over the cap for next year. So that's basically, I think, what this is. He's a top, like essentially a first round pick. He was top of the second round, 37th overall pick, and he's going to cost nothing for them. So the Saints have him under contract for 1.6 million next year, 2 million the year after. They'll have a fifth year option, so they can get 3 years of runtime out of him if they think there's any value. And like, what are you doing with your seventh round pick anyway, or
Mm-hmm.
like your sixth round pick? Like, no harm in taking a punt on that. Philadelphia have signed defensive ends at Darius Smith to a 1 year deal, adding further depth into that rotation. And the Commanders have added defensive end Preston Smith, obviously drafted by the team in 2015. He's brought in essentially to cover for the injured Dietrich Weiss, who we'll talk about when we get to the injuries. We had a couple of cuts as well, Sean. Big kicker clear out happened basically the day after we recorded last week. So Koo was cut by the Falcons. Moody was cut by the 49ers. Moody is now on the Bears practice squad. Koo's never getting that job back, and we'll talk about why when we get to the game reviews. But yeah, it's a tough day for them. But I'm sure like Koo's a good enough kicker. I'm sure he'll catch on somewhere in the league. And we'll have a look at some injuries. So big kind of season ender or kind of high end ones. Watching running back Eckler has an Achilles tear, so he's gone for the season. Then he will remember him mostly for his time with the Chargers. He has won many people fantasy leagues over their time, but at his age with this kind of injury, I'd say he's definitely gone forever at this point. I'd say this is a retirement. We mentioned up there Dietrich Weiss, their defensive end, has a quad injury, and that's going to be him gone for the season, hence the signing of Preston Smith. And their quarterback Jonathan Jones has been placed on IR, so he's going to be gone for at least 4 weeks. Cincinnati quarterback Joe Burrow is in a walking boot. He has a toe injury. He's being sent to a specialist to double check it, but as it sounds at the moment, it's going to be surgery, and surgery would mean kind of 3 months would be the optimistic window for coming back, which would be late December, mid December. Uh, not great. Probably the season gone for them, but we can talk about that a little bit more. And Tampa Bay defensive tackle Kalijah Kancey tore his pectoral, and he's gone for the season as well. I think obviously the big one here is Joe Burrow.
I can't believe he cursed him.
Yeah,
I remember
called
seeing
it,
it going like,
called
oh
it.
my god, I can't believe Connor has managed to call this one.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's although I strongly suspect Jake Browning is not going to be able to lead Jamar Chase to the MVP
I
based
don't know.
on.
You see, because the thing you got to remember is Jake Browning. Like we'll talk about it in the games. But like he was what 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, or 2 touchdowns, two
Mm.
interceptions. Like that's not great, but as long as he's throwing 2 or 3 touchdowns, like interceptions don't come up on T Higgins sheet. They come up with his. And if you go, man, this guy has 15 touchdowns and 1,800 yards with a backup throwing to him. I think it's a good story. But yeah, no, this is rough for Cincinnati. Obviously, some of Joe Burrow's play style can lead to these types of injuries. He's had a bad history with injuries in the league, but again, a lot of that comes down to play style and to an extent the offensive line that they have in front of him. This is painful. They at least have gotten the 2 wins, so it means if Browning can kind of keep them afloat, there's an outside chance of him coming back and being able to do something at the tail end. But I think that's very slim. Um, Yeah, it's just it's rough, particularly when you kind of look at the years that he's missing to these types of injuries. Like this is kind of your prime period. You're spending all your money on all these fancy wide receivers around him, and like these windows and the cap conditions do close, and this felt like one of the years where they were in a good position. Their defense was, playing relatively strong for the first 2 weeks, and to lose Joe now for probably the entirety of the season, maybe he comes back at the tail end. It's a real kick in the balls.
I mean, the worry ultimately is that I think that this is basically the third significant injury that he's had. I mean, obviously his rookie season got cut short, and then in was it 2023 he missed the second half of the season as well. So I mean, no matter you can't question Burrow's talent, and I have been on record by saying that I think he's perhaps one of the most talented quarterbacks I've ever seen. But he is starting, I think, now to get a reputation as injury prone. And the problem with injury prone quarterbacks is at a certain point, and I don't think the Bengals are obviously quite there yet because they don't really know how to deal with the situation as it is. At some point, he becomes so unreliable you can't have him as a franchise quarterback. You're like, we gotta get you a good backup becomes the first step towards slowly phasing the guy out if he has say this is the third one. If it pops up again in say 2027, 2028, he has another injury that keeps him out for a while. Suddenly the Bengals, start thinking about do the Bengals want to sign him to a new contract if he's
Yeah.
a guy you can't actually rely on. So
Well, that's
it's
it.
starting
Like,
to get to that point for him. I think is that you can't doubt the talent, but you do have to worry: is this guy actually going to be on the field
Like,
enough
are you
to
happy
make a
paying
difference for your
someone
team?
$200 million for like 2 seasons, essentially out of
Yeah,
four? Like
yeah.
I get you entirely. And if we remember, like this is a franchise that has history of this as well. Like, Carson Palmer got his knee torn up with them, and then ended up kind of fighting his way out of the organization and so on. But like, yeah, they've been a bit of a snake bit franchise when it comes to quarterbacks, and when they get Burrow now, he looks to be having a injury troubles. It's tough going for them anyway. We'll have a look at some of the other injuries. Brock Purdy's confirmed out for several weeks with turf toe, and George Kittle has gone to IR, so he's gone for at least 4 weeks, and I believe the discussion is 5 to 7 weeks. So more bad news for the 49ers. Minnesota quarterback JJ McCarthy is out for 2 to 4 weeks with a high ankle sprain. It's Carson Wentz o'clock in Minnesota, so that'll be exciting. Yeah, McCarthy was not looking good. There's a lot of discussion online that this injury happened earlier in the game. Well, I say earlier, like in the third quarter to the start of the fourth quarter, and he was playing fine and moving fine afterwards. So there's some discussion about is this partially an injury and partially get him out of there, get his head right, and then kind of you don't want to ruin a young quarterback by having them out and playing poorly and losing their confidence. They've also lost running back Aaron Jones. He's now on IR, so he's gone for at least 4 weeks with an injury due to Richard's fantasy football team, as far as I can tell. He was removed from the lineup and then decided that he needed 4 weeks off. Khalil Mack, the pass rusher for the LA Chargers, has dislocated his elbow. It was quite a horrible looking play on the field. He was like, oh, arms shouldn't bend that way. But thankfully, it's just a dislocated elbow, so he'll be out for a couple of weeks, but he will be back to them this season. Justin Fields is in the concussion protocol and will not be playing against Tampa Bay, which means Tyrod Taylor is going to start in that game. And the Bills have Ed Oliver with an ankle injury, so he's not going to be playing Thursday against the Dolphins. And Matt Milano with a pectoral injury is going to be out too. The one hope being that it being the Dolphins, you don't miss those big contributors on defense too much. Yeah, it's a rough one, particularly a quarterback, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you got to feel for San Francisco. I mean, this seems to be the never-ending thing. I mean, Purdy out for several weeks. It's sad we see 49ers fans online trying to big up Mac Jones, being like, "Oh, we have two starting caliber quarterbacks, so it's okay." And I mean, obviously, Mac Jones whatever Brock Purdy and the criticisms of his contribution, he's a lot better than Mac Jones. That's for damn sure.
I
Uh,
don't know that there was that much of a difference between the two of them,
no, no,
apart
no.
from, $35 million a year in salary or whatever. But yeah.
You got to see bad Mac Jones. I mean, there's competent Mac Jones, fine, but Mac Jones is capable of having a stinker on a level that Brock Purdy, I don't think, has ever graced an NFL field with. So I would not be, if I was a 49ers fan, particularly optimistic about what Mac Jones will contribute to you, especially if you've lost Kittle and therefore he's the out, right? He's the easy out for most plays. It seems the 49ers have designed the tight end
Yeah, just
as the
46 balls to CMC every week for the next 5 weeks.
yeah, they're going to run McCaffrey into the ground probably in the next four
I have
weeks,
I
which is
have
not
seen
going to be
a
good for him
theory
either.
online um, that McCaffrey is essentially sucking the life force out of other 49ers players, kind of leaving them as husks just to keep himself powerful, which it tracks.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I don't envy Kyle Shanahan his job at all with the amount of injuries this team gets. Minnesota as well. Obviously, that the question about JJ McCarthy. Very early in his career. Obviously, the Vikings are to lose Aaron Jones as well on top of that for 4 weeks. Carson Wentz he's okay. I
He's
don't
not.
know if
He's
you
not.
trust him that much anymore. I don't think the Vikings. I think are going to suffer without him. And I
I
mean, the other big.
saw
Go
him
on.
recently. Not great.
Okay. Remember that one season when he was good though,
Yeah, but that
man.
was quite a while back now. No, he was back up for the Chiefs last year, and I think he played the Week 17 game because it didn't matter. And boy,
Oh
howdy, like
yeah,
there was no pressure on him to perform, and he lived up to that. He did not perform at all. Khalil Mack's a bit of a loss to that Chargers defense, but at least he'll be back in a little bit. And again, they've got the 2 game win, so they've got a bit of a buffer in that. The Jets, geez, it's rough. Like kind of just starting to see some bits. Great first game out of Fields, not so great in the second one, and then back to Tyrod. Tyrod's a fine backup, but I'm not sure. Like it's a rough ask against Tampa Bay. You know.
yeah. He stepped in and he didn't seem too bad. I think he's the guy. He threw the only touchdown they had against the Bills. So I mean,
Yeah.
Tyrod is reliable to a certain extent. You kind of know what you're getting from him. And against Tampa Bay, I mean, it will be interesting. One of the things that at least the Jets have thought far enough ahead to get a similar enough quarterback
Yeah,
to
they don't
stick
have
in
to
as the
change the
backup,
rule.
so they
They don't
don't
have
need
to
to
change
change
the
the
playbook.
playbook
Like
that
yeah,
much, which will definitely help for a team that's just kind of trying to figure itself out on offense.
yeah.
But yeah, it's all about momentum at this stage of the season, and obviously the Jets have kind of already lost theirs.
That's
So
it. And then for the Bills, look, it's bad, but they're not long-term injuries. And if there's a week to have them, it's probably this week. But we'll talk about that in the game previews. But before the game preview, Sean, we will talk about the games from last week. So first up, Sean, New York Giants at Dallas, 37-40. This was a lot more exciting than I think we were expecting it to be. I did like this was the first time this game has been in the early window since 2005 because they were like, neither of these teams will be up to much this year. Now it was, tell us about it, Sean. It was sloppy, but it was entertaining.
yeah, it was not the best game. I mean, it was weird. I mean, because obviously the commentators have to hype everything up, and they were hyping up. My God, what an incredible game we've been privileged to watch. And I was like, this is not this is not a good
I was
game.
very
This
confused by that. I'm like how hyperbolic they were being about that. Yeah.
it's an exciting game between two bad teams, but that does not equate to a good game. I don't think either of these teams come away from this game particularly covered in glory. Although Russell Wilson, I mean, all credit to the guy. I've not seen him throw that well in at least 3 or 4 years. I mean, so this is a game that kind of puttered around back to things were at a normal AFC or NFC East level for a while, and then the fourth quarter happened where the Cowboys, they grinded down the field on two separate occasions, and they, took the lead, and you thought they were finally going to put them away, and then Russell Wilson goes, "No, your secondary is shit. I'm just going to bomb the shit down there." Two really long touchdowns, including Malik Neighbors had a really nice game, 167 yards and two TDs for him, three TDs in total for Wilson with 450 yards, and that just both times. Turning the game on its head and forcing the Cowboys to come back again, and then you know gets into overtime, and an awful lot of sloppiness and penalties, and you were kind of wondering, do either two teams deserve to win? And the one guy, Russ was having such a good game, and he makes one big mistake, throws it away, and then the after multiple backs and forth, actually, I think it was like the third or fourth possession in overtime that the Cowboys finally had, and there was genuinely we were looking at a moment like we might get a tie
Yeah,
game,
I thought we were heading towards a tie game.
and it upset Brandon Audrey. He drilled a 64-yarder at the end of regulation to force overtime that genuinely he could have hit that from about 74. And we were all on the chat going, let's see him do it from 80 because we all think that this guy might be the greatest kicker we've ever seen, but he ended up because of various penalties and a good pass by Jack moving for the 46-yard chip shot to win the game. So Aubrey comes out, with the laurels. Russell Wilson comes out with a lot of praising. His downfield passing. He still has that arm. He doesn't necessarily have an awful lot else in his game at the moment, but he definitely still has that arm. Credit to Dak Prescott, 361, 2 touchdowns, and he did orchestrate some drives to keep them in pressure. A lot of big plays. There was a lot of good things going on offensively at times, and certainly they both targeted the weaknesses in their secondaries, which should make for an exciting game. But otherwise, I mean, aside from that, an incredibly messy game, lots of penalties. I think that the Giants gave up something like 160 yards worth of penalties. One of the guys, the left tackle, I think drew 4 penalties on one drive. The Cowboys were much the same as well. So, I mean, it's really hard to know what to take away from this as a game. I mean, it was the Giants looked a little bit better than we thought they would. They do look a little bit spicier. We thought their offense would be disastrous, and at least with the combination between Wilson and Neighbors being such a talent proves that they can score points. But the problem for them is we were kind of relying on the Giants' defense stepping up in the absence of their offense. But this game demonstrates that their defense, especially in the secondary, may not have it all that much. And for the Cowboys, I mean, they really, given how well they played against Eagles week one, you thought this team is at a certain level, and at that level, they should have beaten this Giants team comfortably. And the fact that they struggled this much and had to rely on a long field goal to even get into overtime in the first place, I'd be really worried about this Cowboys team making any kind of dent on the season up ahead. So both these teams come out of this game. I don't think they can hold their heads up high. It's just a disaster of a game that just happened to be quite exciting. But weirdly, I feel a little bit more up on the Giants because we can see what they're actually capable of now. But I don't think Dallas really have anybody. They certainly don't have the neighbors level, someone who can just completely change a game by the kind of the long throw. They don't have that quite as much. Although Lamb and etc. They're quite good, but I Cowboys I don't think they don't look like a playoff team the way they're playing if they play like this again. And the Giants, they're going to lose a lot of games, but at least some of them, you were right. I do think you made this prediction in the preseason. It was like the Giants will sometimes be fun because they will just have games where they
Yeah,
score
they
37
just go
points, and
nuts.
you were absolutely right about that.
Yeah,
But
and we
they
and
do
we
have
and,
to win those
and
games.
we do and we do, and we haven't even seen Jameson Winston at the helm yet, which is even more chaos. Yeah, look, I think if you kind of nail most of that, I think yeah, like Pickens finally got his first touchdown. He's happy with that. But like realistically, you didn't bring him in to be the third receiving option. Like Jake Ferguson, the tight end, had 9 targets in this game, and Pickens only had 5. So I think there's some questions maybe starting to come out about the offensive play calling here from Schottenheimer. I think in particular the one that sticks out in my head is like so he had to nail a 64-yarder. Yeah, they would have had to nail a 67-yarder, and they said we need to get a little bit more ground just to make this easier. And in that instance, he decided to run a draw play out of shotgun for 3 yards. Like how when you need to get yardage for a field goal, and you've got 9 seconds left on the clock, are you running a fucking draw play up the middle? Like if he breaks that play, there's a strong chance that they just don't let him go down until the clock expires and you're done. It was just I just think incredibly stupid play calling at times. I don't think Dallas managed themselves very well in this one, but look, they get the win. They're happy with it. Yeah, I think the Giants probably deserve to win that game. The only big mistake was Wilson, proper classic Wilson. He did fling the interception in overtime with just an arm punt for absolutely no reason, which was very silly. But look, entertaining but sloppy. Next up, we had the Super Bowl replay: Philadelphia, Kansas City, 20-17. There was a defensive game with thin margins, winning it. This fumble interception thing from Kelsey on the goal line won it for Philly, really, because that resulted in a 14-point swing. It did give us an incredibly fun look of Josh Simmons, the rookie left tackle, running at, I believe he reached 19 miles an hour on the pursuit to go down and knock the guy out of bounds. It was incredible athleticism from a man that size. But when you look at it now in retrospect, you kind of go, maybe they should have just let him go, because that meant that they were able to eke another 6 minutes off the clock before scoring, and that kind of left the Chiefs with no time left to go. But yeah, look, Hurts was the Chiefs defense. The concerns from last week are partially, if not fully, gone. I think they are going to be able to make this work. I think the Chargers game appears to have been more of a looking past the opponent to the revenge game you wanted afterwards. They held Jalen Hurts to 101 yards passing and no touchdowns. He did have a rushing touchdown in this game of 15 to 22. Barkley was mostly kept in check as well. 22 carries for 88 yards and one touchdown. So keeping Barkley to that is good, particularly given that the bulk of that yardage came on one large play. On the Chiefs side, look, we knew they were going to be down a lot of receiving options and whatnot. Holmes tried to do it all himself. He had 16 of 29 for 187 yards, a touchdown, and the interception. And frankly, look, the interception, Kelsey had it in his hands and bobbled it up because he tried to catch it against his body. There was a problem where I believe a defender got his hand on that ball when it was passed, so that probably slowed it a little bit or changed the angle a little bit. But Kelsey, a year ago, 2 years ago, would have caught that ball and didn't in this one. And you could see the focus in on trying to use Kelsey as the top receiver. Like he's better than he was at the during the majority of the season last year, but he's not the guy anymore that he was, so he can't be the focal point of that. Mahomes got 66 yards on the ground as well, which I believe made him the top rusher, which is concerning, particularly given that they were finding success in the run game. It wasn't pretty, but Pacheco was getting holes, and that was true in the Chargers game as well. I think last week they had the highest run win rate, but they just went away from the run game entirely. So we'll see if they can mix a little bit more in that in. But yeah, look, this was a good defensive game, and the Eagles were able to push over the edge. I think the Chiefs need better wide receiver options. They'll be coming back. There's a good chance that Xavier Worthy's back this week. Obviously, Rashee Rice is back in week 7 and so on. Good performances from both teams. I think both will be happy with how they did. I will say, and I don't want to go all the way into it again, but this fucking tush push thing needs to get sorted. Like, it was egregious in this game how many false starts and penalties should have been called on them, and they weren't. Like Dean Blandino, the rules analyst on the broadcast, just said, "Look, he's done with it. Like you can't rule these things. You can't enforce them. You can't. It needs to be gone. And it doesn't need to be gone if the rest will just make a point now of looking in and calling it whenever there are rules being broken. But on three separate key downs where they ran tush pushes, there are like half a second before the ball snaps, guards moving already. Like, you need to regulate this properly or get it the fuck out of the game. Because it is just like, and I don't mind it being there as long as they actually enforce false starts and actively enforce, people. Particularly the big one is that in the design of it, the center will often move the ball before the ball is snapped. Like, it's ridiculous, and they need to get that sorted very quickly. But Philadelphia deserved the win in this one. The Chiefs, even though it's now 0-2, I feel actually pretty good about the team. I think Philly looked good. But yeah, I think it was a quality game that felt a little bit more like feeling each other out early season. Someone in the chat, I think, said it feels like a preseason game, and I suppose for these two teams, traditionally that would be. For the Chiefs, it makes it a more uphill battle to try and make the playoffs. But yeah, no, I'm pretty impressed all round.
Yeah, I mean, it's good. It's good that you're optimistic. I mean, I would say for me, I'm still not entirely convinced the Chiefs are where they need to be. But I mean, that does kind of happen. There have been years where the Chiefs kind of had a slow start. I mean, offensively, I still think that there's a little bit of worry there offensively, and maybe that comes down to once they get back where the once they get back Rice back, a little bit down the line, they might get better at things. I think their third down consistency in this was quite bad. They weren't converting third downs enough. You don't want to be relying on Pat Mahomes to be scrambling runs. I mean, he's good at them, and he does know how to avoid bad hits and stuff, but that's not what he's good at. It's not what you should be leaning on him for. So I mean, I would be a little bit. I'm not concerned about the Chiefs because it's just more I don't think I've seen enough from them for me to believe that they've overcome the Super Bowl hangover, as it were. But you expect to grow into it as the season comes along. But also equally, I'm not entirely convinced that the Eagles have quite started this season in the vein that they should have. I mean, I big them up in a big way in the preseason because I thought they have so much talent all over the place that they're really coming from a very good place with their Super Bowl win that I thought they'd just march on. But it has been a kind of a grind. They didn't do fantastic against the Cowboys team, which has now been demonstrated as maybe not as good as they were made out to be in Week 1. And in this game, they kind of they didn't have enough. They didn't. I think they had fewer yards than Kansas City on the offense, but they won it by game management, right? They made the plays when they needed to. They got the defense stepped up in terms of strong red zone defense and interceptions and discipline on key downs, and they got the special teams going with the long field goal and everything. So they did. It was a championship performance, and that they won a tight game without necessarily playing all that well. But when I think about that Eagles, I think about the season after. So after they lost the Super Bowl to the Chiefs. I can't even remember 2023 season. This would be now. They did have a season where they were winning games, but they didn't look all that good, and that ended up collapsing around week 11, week 12 when they did start to lose, and the whole thing fell apart like a house of cards. And you would worry that maybe the Eagles are going the same way again. They may be winning games, but they don't necessarily have the momentum that this Eagles team under Sirianni has as its kind of its identity they steamroller teams and they get this momentum and they seem unstoppable. And when they don't have that, this season has a tendency to peter out. So I would worry about that in terms of that. I mean, the touch push thing. Yeah, I don't agree with banning plays, but I do think they should enforce it. And if it's that difficult for the refs to enforce, if you've ex-refs coming on TV and saying the difficulty is actually it's quite a difficult play to enforce, then maybe you do need to find a way to make them run the play in a way that the refs can see it, because obviously fairness is the main thing from that. But yeah, I guess it's not you can't draw too many conclusions from the game in which both teams are trying to not give away too much, assuming that they'll meet again further down the line. But again, neither of these teams cover themselves particularly in glory, and I need to see more from them, I think, before I can kind of commit to these teams being, Super Bowl bound or whatever. Especially from the Chiefs, I want to see them. I want to see a good offensive performance from the Chiefs sooner rather than later, or I would still get worried about where their offense is
Oh yeah.
at the moment.
No, I have a feeling this is going to be a real rough start to the year and then a really strong back half of the year. I've got a feeling we're going to be like 3-6 or something like that, and then
Wow.
win a
Okay.
because I think the back end of our season looks much nicer than our start end. Because like we get Giants next, that's fine. You got Ravens tough, Jags mid, Lions tough, Raiders play well at the moment, Commanders tough, Bills tough. But then you've got Colts, Texans, Cowboys, Titans and some divisional games at the end. So I think it'll be an interesting one to see how they go. Denver at Indy's up next, 28 to 29. Very exciting game. Maybe Bo Nix is not the savior, or is it all just that Danny Dimes is the savior?
What kind of bizarro universe have we fallen into where Danny Dimes is the early leader for the MVP? Like, it's weird. Like, so he's had two starts for the Colts, and in neither situation he's completed both games with 0 punts on offense and 0 turnovers. And Peyton Manning, his entire Colts career, only ever achieved that once, and Dimes achieved that twice now in his first two games. So it's a very weird world we're in where Danny Dimes is playing at MVP level. Like, he's 316 yards, touchdown pass. He ran another one in. He refused to make mistakes, which was always been the Daniel Jones problem. Was that he was a turnover machine at times. He managed to find ways past this quite decent Denver defense, building upon that efficiency. There was a lot of heavy blitzes, and there were a lot of tight windows with Pat Surtain involved, and he managed to find his way through that. So I was really impressed by the fact that this actually looked like he's a good quarterback, and I just don't know how. I just don't have a way of conceptualizing that in my head at the moment. Also, a very good game from Jonathan Taylor, as I predicted he would have a strong season, 165 yards rushing, and he also had a receiving touchdown. But despite all that, the Colts still needed, a little bit of luck at the end. They were down by 2 points coming into the end of the game. They got a 60-yard field goal. Spencer Schrader, who was 4 for 4 at that time, missed the 60-yarder as time expired, but there was a leverage penalty, a surprise, unexpected penalty on the Broncos, brought them up to 45 yards, and they nailed. So, Colts looked very good offensively, but still needed a little bit of luck at the end. That needed to be emphasized. From the Denver side, I mean, Bo Nix I thought was pretty decent. 206 yards, 3 touchdowns. He did throw an interception. The offense did move the ball well. But it was mostly in spurts. There wasn't a tremendous amount of consistency in how things were doing. Some nice moments from Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin, J.K. Dobbins did his bit at the end, but the mistakes were costly. So the touchdown happened inside the 10-yard line. They weren't able to close out that game in ahead, and obviously the defense weren't able to hold enough and made that crucial mistake. Special teams made that crucial mistake right at the end. So I mean the defense maybe. I mean the defense was supposed to be the stronger part of this unit, and I feels like Sertan. I thought he could have maybe stopped the passes, but he did have. He was the guy on point tackling where it was needed, but there was maybe a few cracks being shown, especially up front. I thought. There were, the coverage wasn't necessarily where they needed to be. Tight ends were able to exploit some gaps. There were some players that were being targeted for yards and situations. So defensively, I think the Broncos maybe need to step up a little bit more. But they look like a good team. The Broncos, they look like a good team. They look like we talked about this. Peyton's got his team together. Bo Nix continues to look like a decent player who's maybe still learning the game a little bit more than he does. They maybe need to do a little bit more. But the Colts, I just don't know. I mean, are they actually good? Question mark. They were supposed to be one of the worst teams in the league, and now they look like a team that could comfortably win their division because the other
Oh yeah.
the other two teams in their division who were supposed to be good, the Jags and the Texans, are just not.
And they're and they're,
Um,
and they're about to slide into 3-0, I'd say, because it's the Titans they have coming up ahead of them.
yeah,
Like
I
it's
mean it's a very weird world we're living in, and I have to believe that Danny Dimes will regress to the mean at some point.
mm.
We just haven't seen it yet. So I just don't know what to make of the Colts. I think you got to ride the train as long as it goes, but surely it'll come off the tracks at some point. Surely.
Yeah, like Pat Surtain definitely underperformed this game for someone coming off a defensive player of the year. You would have expected a little bit more, but like this is overall a very good defense, and that's why I actually picked Indy to win this game because I had a feeling that something like this was going to happen. Although I was expecting it to be more of because the offensive output from Denver was actually fairly solid in this game. I was expecting that to be a little bit lower down, but yeah, I'm with you. I just can't work out this Danny Dimes thing. Like he did look good here, and this is a good defense, and like yeah, just quite impressive. Like 316 and a touchdown, gets another rushing touchdown. Like that's unheard of. But like yeah, like Jonathan Taylor is being trad Jonathan Taylor, like kind of what he was drafted for. So as long as that keeps going, they can keep rolling. And I suppose we'll talk about them in the previews, but yeah, it should be pretty solid for them. For Denver, disappointing. They're gonna feel like they should have been able to win this. Like you said, the field goal fiascos with the doink followed by the penalty and so on. It was tight, but realistically, if Denver have playoff and Super Bowl aspirations, Indianapolis is, even with a resurgent Danny Dimes, is the kind of team that you should be able to beat. Washington Green Bay up next, 18 to 27. Look, the Packers domination continues. They were at complete ease in this game. They were 17 to 3 up entering the fourth quarter. Um, Love went 19 of 31 for 292 yards and 2 touchdowns, relatively kind of mistake free in this game. The tight end Tucker Kraft went 6 for 124, so he was very heavily featured. And they kind of got the run game going a lot more, I suppose. Given the lopsidedness of the score, that's somewhat to be expected. But Jacobs got 23 carries for 84 yards and a touchdown. Their defense was really good in this game. I think there was only 11 passing yards for Washington in the first quarter. Now, obviously, look, there was the injury that happened to Daniels and so on, so that's probably going to, cut them down a bit. But he was solid enough in this game. His completion percentage wasn't great because the defense was working well, but he looked a little out of sorts at times. 24 of 42, 200 yards and two touchdowns. But like realistically, the vast majority of that work was done in the fourth quarter when the game was out of hand. They lost Eckler. So we said he's gone for the season. He's probably gone for good at this point. Um, and I'd like to be able to use that as an excuse for Washington, but it's not really. Like, they have depth at that position. They have Bill came in and ran the ball, and they've got the other fella, Rodriguez, who wasn't active for this game, but I imagine is probably kind of moving up draft boards everywhere if you're looking on your waiver wires. Um, yeah, like this was a very one-sided game. I'm starting to get a little concerned about the lack of connection that we're seeing between Terry McLaurin and Daniels at this stage. Now, hopefully, they'll come out and rectify that this week coming. They've got Vegas, who don't have the best secondary in the world, so maybe that's where you'll see it happening. But yeah, it's Green Bay just looking like they're coasting, and this is two playoff teams that they have beaten now in back-to-back weeks with relative ease. For Washington, not the start you want to be seeing. Like they just looked entirely outclassed here, and they need to kind of get back into the lab and work out what's changed so substantially from what was working in year one, because it's not working right now.
Yeah, I mean the Packers. It's just it's amazing. It really is. It really feels like they're coming together in the full package. The offense, you know, Jordan Love is, as I talked about last week, really mature. 292, avoiding turnovers. Tucker Kraft had a big game. They feel like that offense is really knows where it is. But the really exciting part of this Packers team is how good this defense is. They have the reason they've faced two playoff teams, and the Lions, as we saw this week, actually are still quite good, but they look so comfortable against the Lions because the defense just is so dominant at the moment. And I do think Micah Parsons does play a role. He's not necessarily getting a huge amount of the stats at the moment, but he's the disruptor, right? He's the guy who's getting the pressure, he's getting the hurries, and more importantly, he's the guy who's drawing the attention. He's drawing the various other O-line opponents towards him, which frees up other people to do things. And I don't think teams have quite adjusted to having a presence like that on the opposing side. And I guess this is the advantage that the Packers have right now, is that the late trade means that nobody has any film on how Parsons fits into this system, and nobody quite, so he's kind of an X factor that no one quite knows how to deal with yet. And maybe as the season goes on, teams will get a better sense of how they're using Parsons, and maybe damp down a little bit of what the effectiveness is. But at the moment, they just look so good. They're efficient and in the offensive side, and they're destructive on the defensive side, and nobody at this stage is quite at their level. You don't give out Super Bowls after 2 weeks, but if there's an early leader for most impressive team of the year so far, it is the Packers by a mile. For the Commanders, yeah, it's just not clicking quite yet. But I wouldn't get too thrown up. I mean, Daniels he hasn't regressed, say, as much as CJ Stroud did in his second year. So I don't think the sophomore slump is something we can really talk about yet. Just hasn't quite clicked. The loss of Eckler is going to hurt them a little bit in terms of what they do there. But I'm willing to suspend judgment on the Commanders till I maybe 5 or 6 weeks worth of a look at them before he can tell whether they are quite at the level that we thought they might be. But the Packers are, yeah, definitely the most impressive team of the season so far.
And finally, Jacksonville, Cincinnati, 27-31. Obviously, the overarching story, this is going to be the Joe Burrow injury, but Jacksonville took them right down to the end, nearly had it in hand, but Jake Browning led the comeback. This was an interesting one, Sean.
Yeah, it's another game where it's kind of hard to know how to assess these two teams because the Bengals obviously lose their franchise quarterback and Browning comes in, and Browning he's not bad. He definitely has some upside to him, and he knows the system, and he got through two touchdowns, and he had a rush touchdown, and he was able to get people like Jamar Chase heavily involved in the game. But he is also he does have a tendency to make mistakes, 3 interceptions, and he's not someone you could maybe build a franchise around. And certainly, I don't think many Bengals fans would want to have their season on Browning's shoulder for very too long. But I mean, shouldn't the Jags then have won this game comfortably? Like you're facing a team which isn't quite where it needs to be, struggling, have a backup QB in, and yet the Jags never quite managed to pull away at any point. Never managed to do all that much impressiveness. They stuck around, but I mean Lawrence, just over 50%, in terms of his throwing. He threw three touchdowns, but he also threw two interceptions. Brian Thomas Jr. looked kind of all over the place. He looked really out of sorts in terms of what he was doing. There was just miscues all over the time. Several drop passes by Thomas. A 4th and 5 red zone chance was a big one. Tons of penalties. The coaching I thought got quite conservative as the game went on. They were really trying to just hold on to leads that they should have been trying to build upon. There's already cracks seem to be evident in Liam Cohen and Trevor Lawrence's relationship, where Liam Cohen was telling Trevor to throw it into his chest, and Lawrence was telling him to basically fuck off. There's a lot of things to worry about the Jags side, because I think they should have, when the Burrow injury happened, I mean, they should have been the team. They should have taken this game over and absolutely ran away with it. And you also have the things. Travis Hunter plays both sides, and that's huge and wonderful. But he also had a PI call that was pretty good against them. So quite sloppy, and you would say uninspiring from the Jags on that side. In a game they really should have won, and given their division, and the Colts might be better than we thought, and the Texans aren't as good as we thought, there might have been an opportunity. Again, we talk about this about the Jags all the time. The opportunity to step on and be the big dogs in the AFC South, they don't seem to be able to take it. So I can't say I'm overly optimistic about where the Jags season's going. And the Bengals, you just don't know, right? You don't. It's all dependent now on how well they manage to hold together in the absence of Burrow. And you still have an awful lot of catching talent, and Jamar Chase had 165 yards and a touchdown in this game, and obviously you still have T Higgins, and they've got pieces like Gesicki and Yusufas who contribute. So there's a lot of talent still there, but I just don't know if Jake Browning is the guy to pull them through, and they're in a division that's quite a tough one. You kind of got to take your wins where you can get them. So I feel like both of these teams, they they the Bengals get the win, and they're 2-0, and they're not very often 2-0 at the start of the season, so that's a good place. But still, you'd worry about how sustainable this season's going to be if they are, for example, missing Burrow for 3 months, which would bring them up basically to like nearly the end of the season by the time he comes back. Can you trust Browning to get them into a 10, 11 win season, to get them into playoff form for when Burrow comes back to his best? I don't know if you can rely on that, and it's just another lost year for this Bengals team. And for the Jags, they've got to show it. At some point, this team has to click together and show something. And I'm really starting to feel as though Trevor Lawrence might be failing the final tests that we're going to give to him. If he's already
Yeah.
pissed off at what his head coach is telling him, the head coach that was explicitly brought in to make him a better quarterback, and you're in week 2 and you're already telling him to shut up, that's a very bad sign for where this organization is going.
No, it was rough for them. Like I said, we talked about this in the preseason, that I think essentially, given what they did to get this coach and given the question marks over Lawrence, I think if this becomes a push and shove between them, I think they might be siding with the coach over the quarterback, because he really hasn't shown himself to be what they expected the draft stock to be. But yeah, like this is a game that they should have been able to capitalize on and do more with. And they just weren't able to get it done. They were quite limp in the second half, particularly in the fourth quarter. But like, the one that sticks in my head is like you get an interception of the Bengals on their own, what, 16-yard line or so, and yeah, like you just can't do anything with it. Like you've a negative run, an incompletion, a big run, and then an incompletion. Like I don't know how they're putting the ball back in Lawrence's hand at that point, when like you look at your running backs, you're averaging over 5 yards a carry across everyone. Like, even Bayshon Tuttle 5.3, Travis Etienne 5.1, LeQuinn Allen Jr. 6.5, albeit only on 2 carries. Like, your run game is working. How you're at the 7, and you just need 4 yards, 5 yards, and you get a fresh set of downs. You can maybe score. You can milk another 2 minutes off the clock, and you just turn it over in downs in 4 plays after an interception in the red zone. Like it's unacceptable. And then they allow the guys to drive the length of the field, 15 plays, 92 yards, 3.5 minutes off the clock, and yeah, like you're behind by four, and there's 18 seconds left, and you can't do anything with it. Like it's just depressing for Cincinnati. The defense stepped up in the back end for them. That was good. Browning is messy, but serviceable. You just need to lean on Chase Brown a lot and hope the running game can keep you going, and then work out what game script to work with Browning. Because you could see moments in this where he was maybe stretching himself a bit. He wasn't expecting to come in. They needed to change some of the play calls, simplify it, and that kind of stuff. And this would be an interesting one to see how Zach Taylor deals with it, I think, because I think that will be telling. But yeah, like for Cincinnati, a good win to be able to gut it out and get there. For Jacksonville, man, this was in your hands. Like you just fucked it. It was bad. And yeah, I'm concerned about motivation in that building. Like you said, Brian Thomas, like, giving up on plays, not blocking, not finishing routes, just looking a bit of a mess out there. Travis Hunter, making mistakes on the defensive side of the ball, not being a huge contributor on the offensive side of the ball. I just don't know really. I don't know about this Jacksonville team at all. Uh, there's definitely talent there. Maybe they can get it turned around, but yeah, just bad vibes. Um, but yeah, so as we say every week, all games are important, just some are less important, and those ones we tackle in a slightly briefer way in the dump off. So first up, New England at Miami, 33-27. The Pats found a way with a Gibson kick return for a touchdown in immediate response to Washington's punt return for a touchdown. Drake May looked better in this game, 230, 2 touchdowns and a rushing touchdown. The big surprise of this one was Stevenson going off. Everyone was like, "Oh, the young guy Henderson, he's great," and then Stevenson said, "No, I'm still the big dog here." 142 yards combined. Milton Williams had 2 sacks, including in the last play, to kind of help out what was not a great Pats performance. Tua looked the best he has this season, but still wasn't looking phenomenal. 315 yards, 2 touchdowns, interception. Tyreek got over 100. Achan had 122 yards in this game as well. Like, this was a game that New England should have won a bit more comfortably. I think it kind of tells us roughly where both these guys are setting. Miami looked better than they did beforehand. New England looked a little bit better, but like neither of them are really at the races fully. Seattle and Pittsburgh, 31-17. Seahawks are just looking pretty good here. Their defense really locked in on this one. Darnold had 295 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Walker went for 105 and a touchdown, and JSN over 100 as well. So it was a good balance in the offense. I think the Steelers, Rodgers had his moments, but this defense was just too good for him, and he was kind of found out in a few spots. He had 200 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Caleb Johnson, oh, poor Caleb Johnson. Rookie running back who's trying to fight his way into the rotation after looking good in preseason, absolutely fucks a kickoff. So it bounces, goes over his head. I think it did tap his head as well, which is 2 reasons why he should have gone to collect it, but it just meant that they had a kickoff touchdown, which was awful. Warren looked good, 134 yards combined, so they're probably going to stick with him, even though he's not the most explosive, but he's reliable, and Johnson just proved he's very much not that. Pittsburgh need to work out what they're doing offensively. This is a good Seattle defense, so I wouldn't fully discount them, but yeah, we saw some of the limitations in this game. Chicago took on Detroit 21-52. Detroit say, "Yeah, fuck you, Ben Johnson. We don't need you. Our offense is great." 5 touchdown day for Goff, who had 334 yards. Gibbs went over 100 and a touchdown. Amon Ra 115 and 3 touchdowns. Jameson Williams 108 and a touchdown. 8.8 yards per play is a franchise record for the Lions. It did feel a bit pointed that they wanted to do that against the previous offensive coordinator, I would say. On the other side, Chicago, Caleb was mid, 207 yards, 2 touchdowns and an interception. Odunze was good. He had 128 of those yards, so took more than half of it, and 2 touchdowns. But this defense is not really there. The secondary is just really not at the races at all. Yeah, it's not looking great. Like Ben Johnson, the Ben Johnson picks for coach of the year are definitely looking a little bit questionable at this point, but we'll see if he can continue to develop that team. Rams at Tennessee, 33-19. Cam Ward is fun. He's definitely an entertaining player, has skills, but that team is not there. He had an incredible cross-body Mahomes style throw, but yeah, there's just no one around him. He had 175 yards, a touchdown, but took 5 sacks. Pollard looked solid on the ground, but I think they kind of wishing that they hadn't lost other running backs to injury, get a bit more rotation there. The Rams looked very exciting. Like Stafford looked pretty classic Stafford in this one, 198 yards, 3 touchdowns and an interception. The combo of Adams and Nakua are working really well. They're spreading the ball around nicely. The experience showed out of this Rams team, particularly down the stretch in this game, whereas Tennessee, they had flash moments, but they're not a consistent team. It'll probably take a season or two to get there. But on the plus side, Tennessee fans, Cam Ward does look good. You just need to, get a whole rest of a team around him. Buffalo with the Jets, 30-10. I'll hold my hands up. I was entirely wrong on this one. The Bills' defense is fine. It's just maybe the Ravens are very good. Josh Allen apparently doesn't need a nose to play. I think he had to, after getting it injured and was bleeding out of it early in the first quarter, I want to say it was, they packed it up with gauze so he just couldn't breathe very well. This is the first win that they have had where Josh Allen doesn't throw or run for a touchdown, apparently. Big Cook's Day, 21 carries, 133 yards, 2 touchdowns. They absolutely shut down the Jets' run attack on defense, holding Hall to just 2.3 yards a carry and a combined 83 yards passing. 2 fumbles for Fields. It was just a rough day. The Jets, like after the excitement we had for them after week one, they just looked checked out very early in this game. And like I know, they tried to do the hard nosed thing. They fired the guy who made the special teams mistake last week. Like you can't fire half your defense, you can't fire half your offense. So they're going to need to find a new motivational tool to get themselves up and ready to go. Obviously, Tyrod being in there will limit them maybe a little bit further, but we'll see what they can do. Buffalo just looking much stronger in this one. San Francisco at New Orleans, 26-21. Mac Jones, 279 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, led the 49ers to a win. I don't think there was any point in this game where they didn't have the lead or at least a tie, but they did have to stress at the end. Like their last couple of plays, they just weren't getting anything going. They had to punt 3 times and a turnover on downs while they had a 5-point gap. And Rattler looked pretty decent in this game and was knocking on the door towards the tail end. He had 207 yards and 3 touchdowns. There's less running this week from him, so we might see a little bit more of that come back in. But overall it was a sloppy game from New Orleans. A lot of penalties. Kamara had a fumble and so on. Um, what I will take out of this is the New Orleans team, and we saw it a bit last week as well. They're more competitive than I thought they would be. They're not like a top end competitor. They're not going to challenge or anything, but they're going to keep games a little bit more adventurous than certain other teams I can think of. Cleveland and Baltimore, 17-41. A very one-sided celebration here. The Ravens were doing their, is it 30 years since they left the city of Cleveland and renamed themselves the Ravens and so on. And the NFL schedule makers knew that when they were putting this on the card, and it feels, if anything, frankly unfair. 4 touchdowns for Lamar. The defense did a good job in this one. They bottled Henry up. A very defensive game. Like there was 11 punts in the first half, one of which was blocked, which you don't see a huge amount of these times, which is great. And it was only 3-10 at the half. Cleveland have an incredibly good defense. I believe they're the top-rated defense through 2 weeks, and they're the first team in like 40 years to have that, to have held all their opponents below that level of yardage and to still be 0-2. But yeah, look, this Ravens offense is fun. DeAndre Hopkins looks a lot younger in it. Gabriel got in at the end for the Browns just because it was out of touch and they didn't want to risk any injuries to Flacco. I would wonder for the Browns if maybe we are creating towards the point where they start to consider bringing in some of these younger guys, see what they have. Like there's no miracle season happening here for Cleveland, so realistically this is a year where you need to assess those quarterbacks and know what you have. So I'd expect maybe a week or two to start seeing changes at that. Carolina at Arizona, 22-27. Arizona were coasting in this game, 27-3 in the third quarter, and then they suddenly let Carolina get back in this. Calais Campbell, who, Jesus, I'd genuinely almost forgotten he was still playing in the league at this point. He's 39. He had the big sack to close this out. Panthers managed to recover an onside kick to try and keep the ball rolling and keep themselves in this game, which is great because, again, you don't see very many of those at all. It proves that it is still possible. The box score looks pretty for Young. He had 35 and 55 for 382 yards, 3 touchdowns and interception, which normally you would say, oh, that's good, that's development, but it was sloppy. There was a lot of mistakes. Like, they could have been doing more, and a lot of that came late in the game whenever the Cardinals just kind of left the door open a little bit. But Ted McMillan looked good, over 100 yards, but they got it together in the fourth quarter, too little, too late. I would say realistically the scoreline flatters them a little bit. It was never really that close a game. Atlanta, Minnesota, 22-6. Do you like field goals? Because we have all the field goals in the world. Bijan went 22 carries for 143, and Algier had 16 carries for 76 yards and a touchdown. And that was all she wrote. Michael Penix threw 13 passes out of 21 completed for 135 yards. Easy street, no problems at all. No issues against this Minnesota defense, which is meant to be their big calling card. Now, look, they kept him out of the end zone, but JJ looked lost in this game. He had no idea what he was doing. He went 11 of 21 for 158 yards, 2 interceptions, 3 fumbles. Like, that is catastrophic levels of performance. There was one very cool big Justin Jefferson catch, but that was about it. They were never at the races. Romo hit all of his field goals. Koo is never getting his job back. Atlanta looked like a very exciting little team now, and Minnesota, they are just at sea at the moment. Who knows really what that's going to look like? I think they will be doing an awful lot of assessment, because this has suddenly gone from, wow, I wonder can he take any quarterback and get them to be like a playoff competitive team, to, wow, I wonder will they be selecting another quarterback next year with the first overall pick, because Minnesota are not at the races currently. Tampa Bay at Houston, big improvement from Houston. They looked sharp. Still only about 50% completions from Stroud, but it was better. 13 of 20 13 completions, 207 yards and a touchdown. Woody Marks finally got to see the field. That was fun. He's the rookie running back they have. He looked good in it, and I think he had 2 touches and a catch or something like that. They need to get a little bit more of him working in. The Nico touchdown was very impressive, getting his foot and his shin in bounds before his knee. It was very cool, but they still need to get a little bit more explosive on offense. The defense is still very strong, and that's kind of what kept them in this game. Baker had a classic game. He looked good in the pocket. He had a lot of time there. Their offensive line did well against a pretty decent pass rush here from Houston. He spread it around a lot. He had four wide receivers with more than 4 targets, but they went run heavy in this because they knew that was going to be their route to success. They ran it 30 times. There was 4 sacks, a punt blocked, and just a really strong last drive to win it. Like, the Texans were ahead. The Texans really should have closed this out. If their calling card is going to be this hard-hitting, tough defense, it's going to knock you around and stop you. Like, you can't be letting them have a big long drive at the end to win. I'm sorry. Like, it's just not allowed, particularly while you're still trying to work out the Stroud stuff. I did hear an interesting theory that apparently the new offensive coordinator is trying to get Stroud more involved by letting him make more calls at the line, letting him set his protections, making him, him make the decision on run looks and so on. And I would wonder if the problem that we had is maybe he looks a bit lost, maybe he's not processing that quickly, maybe that's a step in the wrong direction. Maybe you don't want to be putting more on his plate, maybe you want to take some more off it and see if that can help them get themselves going again. And finally, the Chargers went to Vegas and dominated them 20-9. A sloppy game from both teams. I was very confused about the coverage, where everyone was like, "Oh, wasn't this an incredible performance here from the Chargers?" I thought it was sloppy throughout. I think the Chargers had some excellent individual moments in it. There was a couple of catches, a couple of passes that were beautiful, a couple of runs that were very good, but like, neither team was consistent. Neither of them were playing their best. Both rookie running backs kind of underperformed a little bit in this. Like, you'll probably have seen online all of the videos of the pass protection afforded by Genty, or the absolute and complete lack of it. It was terrible. Hampton played well when he was rushing and whatnot, but he had a fumble, which then meant that he kind of dropped down the pecking order very quickly for how many touches he got. Gino looked really bad in this game. 3 interceptions, no touchdowns, took 3 sacks in it. Like, I suppose you're going to get a few games like that with him, and this is a decent to good Chargers defense, but like, you can't be doing that, Gino. You can't, particularly whenever you're not got your running game going. Like, Genty really hasn't hit the ground running. You need to be getting a little bit more out of that. The Chargers, while obviously won this game and looked the better team, they still tried to charge it. Like their last four possessions were a turnover on downs, a punt, a fumble, and then they just got to kneel it out. Like they gave the Raiders every opportunity to get back into this, but they just didn't have the horses to be able to do it. There was a lovely touchdown pass to Keenan Allen, who I might add is now on the tracking to see whether or not, if he keeps up this kind of pace, we'll be able to break 1,000 receptions. Not in the year, obviously, on the career, but yeah, but it was interesting. But yeah, just Vegas weren't at the races, and so that ends our review of all the week 2 games. Let's go on and have a little look at week 3. So first up, Sean, Thursday night football. Miami are traveling to Buffalo in what people are calling barely a football game. We've gone for Buffalo across the board, right? Like there's no chance,
Well,
right?
there's definitely one team at this game. I just don't know about the other one. So obviously the Bills they look pretty good. They seem like they've got it all together. They had their epic win week 1, and then they a little bit more sedate, normal beating up of AFC East opponents this week. Josh Allen seems to be in good form. The defense is performing better than we thought. So, I mean, the Bills are at home here. You kind of have to back them because the Dolphins. I mean, week 2 was not as bad as week 1, but that does not mean it was necessarily good. We're seeing a little bit more spark out of Tua, and Tyreek, showed up this week, but who knows if that's going to be a recurring theme. So, I mean, I just think the talent differential is just it's monumental here, and the Bills are at home, they're in good form, and the Dolphins. They don't necessarily travel all that well either. So the Bills have to win this game, and you would expect a blowout, but you never know with these kind of games. Every
Yeah.
time you expect a blowout, it never comes. But I would expect the Bills they should be comfortable here.
Yeah, like the only chance is there are injuries. Ed Oliver's out, Matt Milano's out, and so on. But like, yeah, unless there's something major happening, it's hard to look past the Bills, particularly at home on a Thursday night game. Early slate: Cincinnati at Minnesota. Myself and Ronan have gone for Minnesota. You've gone for Cincinnati, Sean. It's an interesting game. Both teams. I might actually move mine to Cincinnati, given they're onto the backup. Who's Minnesota's backup again? We discussed it
It's
literally earlier
Wentz,
this
Carson
episode.
Wentz,
Pardon?
Carson Wentz.
Yeah, I'm going Cincinnati. Um, yeah, no, Cincinnati. We'll take Cincinnati to win this one. Yeah, look, both on backup quarterbacks. Not going to be the most exciting game in the world, is it, Sean?
No, I mean, obviously, you looked at this maybe looking at the start of the season, you thought, oh, this could be a good game to see where both these teams are at. And now we know both these teams are on backup quarterbacks. And Minnesota have also lost their star running back. And, they've had a pretty sloppy start to the season and looked pretty out of it against the Falcons. Whereas the Bengals, are 2-0, but, how sustainable is it? I think you got to give the edge to Cincinnati simply because they do you know, they have the Chase Higgins thing, and their defense has looked a little bit better than we thought it would. I feel that they're even without Burrow, they're in a slightly better place than the Vikings are. Whereas I think the Vikings are still trying to figure out, even with McCarthy in, there was a sense that the Vikings are still trying to figure out how their offense actually
Yeah,
works. And now having him out and Aaron Jones out as well means they're right back at square one in terms of that offensive learning how they are. So I think Cincinnati a little bit ahead in their journey, and 3-0 the Bengals. So you start dreaming and start hoping that Joe Burrow comes back in time for your epic playoff run.
yeah. I think Minnesota's hope in this game is that they do have a good defense, albeit that it hasn't performed to the level of the first 2 weeks. And against Jake Browning, you'd hope that they find some more success with that. The concern is Cincinnati's defense has actually been playing pretty decently, and that Minnesota offense looks at sixes and sevens at the moment. Next up is your pick of the week, Sean. Houston at Jacksonville.
Yeah, the AFC South has suddenly become a very interesting place. Not necessarily because the teams are good, but they do seem a little bit closely bunched together. So obviously the big news coming, the big story coming out of the AFC South has been the arrival of the Colts and the quality there, and this kind of put these two other teams who were supposed to be the contenders for the divisional title into a bit of a bind, trying to catch up. Now obviously we talked a lot about Jacksonville in the game reviews. We just don't think they're necessarily where they need to be. That team is not evolving at the pace it needs to, and Trevor Lawrence has not shown it. But they are in a good they are in a good place in terms of AFC South relatively in that you don't need to be that good to win this division, and they are 1-1, and this is the big game for them if they want to win this division. This you have to be winning your home games against your divisional rivals, and particularly when there's another team in your division that's on a bit of a run. For the Texans, I mean, people are a little bit more up with them in terms of week two versus week one, but at the end of the day, they are 0-2, and CJ Stroud is still not playing particularly well. I mean, it's a very long time since his rookie year, and even this defense, which is supposed to be carrying a lot of the weight for the Texans, isn't quite there yet. So, I think it's an important game in terms of where these teams are at and what their ambition can be. And I think it's in that sense it's a must win in a very strange way. Like I think if the Texans fall to 0-3, I think they can maybe start to give up on the season a little bit because they're going to be starting to fall behind quite a bit. Whereas if the Jags can get the win here, I feel it puts them into a place where the Jags are such a confidence team. I think if they actually got a few wins on their back, people like Trevor Lawrence in particular, I think would really get into his groove a little bit more, and get those wins. But can you trust him to win a game? I think is the question that comes out after the Bengals game. So I don't think it's going to be the highest quality game ever, and I can certainly see why the Texans might have just a tiny bit more quality to kind of see it out at the end. But I'm going. Jags are the home team. I'm going to go with them because I just believe at some point this Trevor Lawrence, Liam Cohn thing has to start working. And I want to believe that this is where it does, because if it doesn't start working soon, then this team is in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, like there's going to be a lot of pressure from Liam Cohen on this game to change the narratives. Like Brian Thomas Jr., if you want people to stop talking about you as being oh look, he's checked out, why is this guy on the field? This is the game. Like Travis Hunter, show us something in this game. Whereas Houston, at least they've already had their slightly turn the corner moment in the last one where it wasn't great, but it was better. But yeah, it's not the most exciting, but quite an important game. Indianapolis, Tennessee next. We've got for Indy across the board. Yeah, the continuing saga of the NFL wants to pound Cam Ward into dust before he can be a quarterback continues. This is a strong defense. Tennessee are an understaffed team. Indy are inexplicably very exciting on offense at the moment. Long may it continue. Vegas at Washington next, Sean.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because Vegas are well, we don't quite know where this Vegas team is yet, right? So they won week one against a weak-ish Pats team, and we thought we could see a little bit of improvement in terms of where things were going offensively. But then they had quite a poor game against the Chargers last week, where the offense just did not seem to have any answers whatsoever. So we're back thinking, have the Raiders had yet another false dawn, and we do once again have to watch this team putter around to 6 or 7 wins. So you got to have question marks about them. In terms of Washington, they didn't look all that great against the Packers, but then they were facing probably the most informed defense in the league right then. So it'll be interesting to see if the Commanders against a weaker team finally find their groove a little bit more. They played pretty well against the Giants week one. So I think on that basis, on the fact that I think the Commanders have shown at least a little bit of a little bit of connectivity in terms of their identity and where they are, and they're at home, and it's quite a big journey. Obviously, you are
Mm.
talking about 2 or 3 thousand mile journey here, and the Raiders. It just feels like everything's a false dawn with this team. They're just never going to make that step forward. I got to give the edge to the Commanders here in this one.
Yeah, exciting one next. Rams at Philly. We've gone for Philly across the board. Look, they're starting well. Their defense is playing good. Their offense hasn't quite hit the high notes yet. I'll be intrigued to see how this Rams defensive front deal with the tush push and the kind of pressure they can get on Hurts. They've got good pass rushers, but do they have good enough contain to deal with his legs as well? Again, look, the travel element is coming into this too. Going from LA to Philly is a tough ask. I think Phil.
Especially in the early window. I mean,
Oh
these
yeah, yeah.
guys are playing at 10 a.m. their time.
Yeah,
Like,
body clock time. So it's tough going. I think this should be a close game. I could definitely see the Rams being able to pull this out if they can get the offense firing. It's just to see, this is a hard-nosed Philly team that knows when to rush, and yeah, like their line isn't great in LA, so we'll see what kind of performance we get to see out of Stafford in this one. But we're gonna edge Philly in this one, but I think it should be an exciting game with some big highlight plays. Atlanta, Carolina next, Sean. We've gone for Atlanta.
Yeah, obviously Atlanta have had quite a decent start to the season. I mean, they're still Atlanta, so they're still going to find a way to fuck up the odd game. But they looked pretty good against the Vikings. The Penix has definitely kind of got into his groove, and it does feel like the abundance of talent that they have on that offensive side, they are beginning to find a way with it. So you got to give them the edge in this kind of divisional match because as much as Bryce Young, he has good games, but he also has just awful games. It just doesn't feel like the Panthers are necessarily evolving anywhere, and you'd worry about what the season is going to be like for them if they're just going to have a situation where they're competitive but they're not winning games. So I think because the Falcons have shown us that they might actually be quite a good team, this is an interesting game because can the Falcons actually establish consistency in beating up their opponents and actually having comfortable wins? This would be an interesting one. If they get grinded down into a classic NFC South battle, then we know that they're still the same old Falcons. But it'd be nice to see them maybe put up maybe 40 points here and really go to town.
Yeah, no, it'll be fun. Carolina not doing great at the moment. Their games have looked close, but mostly because of coming back from huge deficits late. So hopefully Atlanta's defense can lock that down. Pittsburgh, New England, we got for Pittsburgh across the board. New England have not looked entirely at the races of late. Pittsburgh had a poor week last week, but this is a slightly undermanned defense at the moment. Positive news for them though is that Christian Gonzalez is back at practice. There's hope that he might be able to play on Sunday, which would be quite helpful for them. I think this is not going to be a incredibly pretty game of football, but I think it's going to edge Pittsburgh in this one. Run game gets itself established, bit of play action coming off the back of it. Metcalf to maybe get a touchdown or two. New England to keep it competitive, but Pittsburgh to win. Green Bay at Cleveland. Sean, we've gone for Green Bay.
Yeah, the two arguably the two best defenses in the league, albeit one of the defenses are so good they gave up 40 points a game. No, obviously we've been talking up the Packers in a big way in these first 2 weeks, and you'd expect them to be able to beat a team of Cleveland's caliber because as much as the Browns do have a pretty good defense, their offense is just is really not there. They just don't really have an offense that can really compete at the level they'll need to. And given what Jordan Love and his receivers are able to do on the other side, I just can't see the Browns keeping up, especially with what the Packers can do defensively. So, this could be a beatdown in a big way if the Packers offense finds its way around this Browns
It,
defense.
it, it has a feeling of that, doesn't it? Jets at Tampa Bay next. We've gone for Tampa Bay across the board. Look, they're looking good. Their offensive line is holding up well, giving Baker time to cook. We've got Jets are going to be with Tyrod Taylor under center. It's not a huge downgrade, but it won't be quite the level that they'll be hoping to recapture from week one. I just think this Tampa Bay team, while not spectacular, is good enough at everything that they should be able to relatively comfortably hold at home against a Jets team that is scrambling a little bit for its identity. And it looked like some players were giving up on it last week. But, they no harm if the coach can get them motivated and get them moving. But yeah, it's hard to look past Tampa Bay at home in that one. Into the late window, Denver at the Chargers. We've gone for the Chargers across the board, Sean.
Yeah, it's a big AFC West battle. Obviously, these two teams are trying to, establish themselves, and with the Chiefs in a little bit of a slump, there may be a chance to steal a bit of a march in terms of the division. The Chargers. I mean, the questions are the Chargers for real? They've one really impressive performance, one less impressive performance, but they still got the win and were comfortable enough in it. You know, I've talked up about Jim Harbaugh and what he's doing, and I think the Chargers are in a good place. And it'd be nice to see them get this. This is kind of a big statement win if they can pull this off. To put this on top of the win against the Chiefs in Week 1 really establishes the Chargers as the force in that division. Whereas the Broncos, I mean, they kind of let it slip last week, but this is a good team. We know what Sean Payton can do in terms of coaching and bringing this team to its maximum. We've seen that Bo Nix is week on week demonstrating that he is actually for real. The questions about the Broncos are maybe a little bit about the defense, which didn't look fantastic against the Colts and maybe needs to take a step up. And so that's going to be, I think, the interesting battle here is going to be Chargers offense against Broncos defense. Can the Broncos ask enough questions of this Chargers offense to kind of knock them off? But because they're at home and they have a slightly better start to the season, I think you got to back the Chargers here. But this is a game to go either way, and it's quite an important one. Again, it's got that Houston Jacksonville vibe to it. Whoever wins this game is in a very good place this early in the season.
Yeah, I was very very close thing. This is my pick of the week because I think it's a very important game, particularly early on. Next up, New Orleans at Seattle. We've gone for Seattle across the board. Look, New Orleans are a more competitive outfit than we expected, but are not really kind of pushing at the upper end. Seattle seem to kind of figure out who they want to be at the moment and are playing pretty good football. As I said, Darnold was working well. They've got that run game going. They've started to get the pass game complementing it nicely. Their defense is looking pretty tasty. Like New Orleans, I think the big deficit for me at the moment is I just don't think their defense is at the races. And I think the way to deal with Seattle is to scare Darnold to get a bit of pressure in his face, get him off his spot, and I'm not sure they got the horses to do it. So Seattle at home, we're going to take them across the board. Dallas at Chicago up next, Sean. Myself and Ronan have gone for Dallas. You've gone for Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, this is an important point of the season. Dallas have gotten their win, but looked quite unimpressive. And obviously, the Bears. We talked about the problems that they had, and they just come off a blowout. It's definitely one of those. This is the stage in the season, and you talk about who's for real and who's for not, and who do you trust. And I think this game will tell us an awful lot about these teams. Are the Cowboys a genuine playoff caliber team? They if they are, they should be able to beat this Bears team. They should be able to find their way around the weaknesses in this Bears defense, which are quite glaring, and take the
Yeah,
win.
you
But
basically
I
just
just don't.
circled the back five players in their
Mm,
defense, and that's a good
but
indication of the
I just
weakness.
don't trust. I just don't trust the Cowboys at this point. I just think they are capable of losing any game, as the Giants showed us. And Ben Johnson is going to be hurting after what happened, and he's going to want to give his fuck you back, to the line and say, no, I am actually the guy. Here, let me show you how I can, dial up a top class uh, offense. Because remember, the Dallas defense, a lot of weaknesses there. Post Parsons, the defense does not quite know where they
hmm
are. They are quite weak in the secondary as well, and can be gotten on the long balls. I can see Caleb Williams to Ndunze being another big link here. So I want to see an evolution in the Bears, and I want to see the Bears take that first step forward. And I think this could be the game to it, where we begin to see what the Ben Johnson Bears starts to look like, and that's why I want to give them the win in
Yeah.
this one.
I've got this as being an exciting, high-scoring game, and I have Dallas winning it by two scores. I my out of the off the top of my head, big selection for this one is CeeDee Lamb over 220 yards and two
Ooh,
touchdowns. I think he has a
Jesus, that's a big one.
monster game against the Chicago defense.
That is a big one.
Yeah. Arizona at San Francisco. Myself and yourself have gone for San Francisco. Ronan's gone for Arizona. Arizona are fine, but not wildly impressive. Like they got ahead in the last game and took the foot off the gas, but then let the guys come back into the game. San Francisco, they're undermanned. They've got a lot of injuries, but it's working. Like CMC is still there and healthy for the moment, and is the engine of that offense. They're at home. This is a division rival game. I expect them to know inside and out what the Cardinals are planning to do schematically and be able to work around it. They've found, decent enough backup tight end usage to cover off Kittle's missing. Pearsall is doing well there. Like it's not you know, the high flying San Francisco offense that you'd maybe want to see for a big Super Bowl year or whatever, but like it's working, and I think it will be consistent against this Arizona defense. On the other side, Arizona's offense is very stop start, very streaky. The San Francisco defense is not the strongest it's been in quite a while. It's actually, I'd say, a relative weakness personnel wise, but schematically, it's been going well for them. Bringing back the defensive coordinator has worked. Salah has them in good shape. They're bringing pressure at the right times. Like I I somewhat struggle to see the Arizona big year unless it's just that unless we get one of those weird Kyler Murray just decides today is his day and he's going to account for 500 yards. I just think the San Francisco team is better coached and much better positioned to be able to game manage a game against an Arizona Cardinals team that I don't think has a massive talent advantage on many spots on its roster. Sunday Night Football is the Chiefs at the Giants. We've gone for the Chiefs across the board, Sean.
Yeah, obviously this is a big get right game for the Chiefs. They've had two tough first two games of the season where they've lost against probable playoff teams. This and their offense has looked a little bit shaky at times, as I said in the game review. So this game, prime time under the lights against a not particularly good team, you would expect. Pat Mahomes to bring it to be a lot of flashy stuff. You would expect the offense to begin to turn that corner. That I think we need to see the Chiefs begin to turn that corner if we want to consider them a serious playoff team. So I think that they're just so they all on paper they're just so much a better team that I don't think the Giants can keep up. And I don't think we're going to see the Russell Wilson game we saw against the Cowboys is not a thing you can produce weekly. I think they've got a really good weapon in Malik Neighbors, but I think if you're clever enough defensively in terms of your scheming, which you have to imagine that Spags is, I think they'll find a way to lock Neighbors out of the game and take away the deep ball, and then you've got the Russ Wilson of the last few years where he just can't progress the ball all that well. So for me, in terms of coaching and in terms of personnel, and because they need this win, I think the Chiefs. You have to give the Chiefs the edge in this one.
Yeah, this is relatively close to must-win territory for the Chiefs, given this is one of the easier games on the schedule on paper. So you'd want them to see it. I expect the Chiefs offense to get the ball moving against this Giants team. Now, the Giants front is very good, their pass rush is very good. While the Chiefs line is better than it was, the weak part is that left guard, Kingsley Sumamatea. So expect to see a lot of pressure coming out of there. Expect to see Mahomes rolling to his right quite a bit. Um, because I think this it's an exploitable secondary. We saw it with the Dallas game. It's just a matter of if all of your players are, in their mid 30s, are you quick enough to get the ball off before the pass rush gets to you directly through the swinging gate that is your left guard? But yeah, no, on paper this should be fine. I expect the Giants to put up numbers as well though, because yes, the Chiefs defense was better last week, but also, you know, for some reason Philly just didn't pass on them, and I still think that there's problems in that secondary. So I could see a Giants win, particularly it being at home, them coming off the big win last week. But I think the Chiefs need it, and the Chiefs will attempt to manage this game around it and figure it out. Hopefully Xavier Worthy's back. If he's back, I feel much more excited about this offense. But we'll see. And finally, Monday Night Football is my pick of the week. Baltimore are at home to take on the Detroit Lions. Myself and Ronan has gone for Baltimore. Sean has gone for Detroit. I think this is going to be an absolute belter of a game. We got two powerhouse offenses coming off big performances. We are expecting good things of them throughout the year. Detroit's defense still a little bit of a work in progress to see. How that's going to shake out. Will they be able to stop Derrick Henry? Will they be able to have the men to do that and also cover Lamar Jackson's legs? I think that's why I'm giving the edge to Baltimore slightly in this one, because Baltimore's defense have not been playing to the level that we would expect them to. They're still good, but they're not great. If Detroit can kind of keep the lightning that they got going last week with the 50 points against Chicago, which obviously, look, Chicago was a far smaller task to deal with defensively than Baltimore. But we've seen that the concepts are there, that the talent is definitely there. It's just a matter of scheming it up and finding your open guys. And I expect this to be close. I can definitely see your pick for Detroit here, Sean. Like I think this will be a very exciting game, but I'm just going with the home team under the big lights in a spot where I just think they're made like they're definitely a more embedded coaching staff than Detroit, and I just think that might see them through. But as you said, the big problem, as I identified 2 weeks ago on this, and I'm still sticking to it, is Baltimore don't want to get too far ahead because they sure as shit don't know how to manage a game when they're up by two scores.
Yeah, no, I expect this to be a very fun game and offensively probably a high scoring one as well. Obviously, the Lions, we see what they're capable of, and we know that offense still has all that firepower, and maybe the defense doesn't quite have what it might need for them to win a championship. But this will be an interesting test if they can take on a team of the caliber of the Ravens and find the answers that they need on the defensive side. I think that's the big test for the Lions in this one. For the Ravens, I mean, I don't know. There is an element to which I just don't trust this Ravens team. You get that, you get that they do have the tendency, as you talked about, to kind of have games where they just don't, it all falls apart, or they have a few quarters where they just don't play very well. I think they didn't play the first half against the Browns. I thought they were appalling, to be honest with you. They really got dragged into the AFC North, wallowing in crapulence until they finally found their way out of it. I think they could if they let the Lions build up a lead, which could happen if they have a slow start, it's very difficult to see how the Ravens kind of fight their way back. So I'm interested to see. I mean, I'm interested to see how this Lions defense does against the Ravens offense. I think that's the big interesting part of this game is do the Lions have defensive answers for a team of this caliber? But I would expect it to be high scoring. But I love the Lions, and I think they showed that they're in a very good place offensively. They found the answers that they needed on the offensive side, and they have that talent. And I just a little bit of me just does not trust the Ravens anymore. Because I just know that they're capable of blowing games, and so I'm just going to give it to the Lions in this one.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. I think it should be make for a very exciting game, and almost certainly a good chance of this being a playoff preview. So fun times to get that good and early in the season. So yeah, that's our predictions for this week. Any plans for the rest of the week yourself, Sean? Just getting out more driving, more practice.
We're actually going up to Athlone for the weekend for the nieces. All my nieces have birthdays that kind of fall around the same time, so this is the weekend to go up and celebrate that. And then, although I'm not allowed driving the motorway, so I can't even drive up. It's such a
Mm.
tragedy. Yeah, that'll be my weekend, and then back to the driving when we get back next week.
Very exciting. Yeah, I don't think I have anything too major planned. Got a Dungeons and Dragons session this weekend. As I said, I'm aggressively approaching my middle agedness by I am anxiously awaiting the arrival of a new set of golf clubs that I ordered. So I've got some irons coming to me, and I won't lie, I was just there, just checking the tracking number on Anpost's website
Oh
about
God.
but yes, unfortunately,
Yeah.
still no updates. So just fingers crossed they might land by the weekend, and I could just kind of get out and give them a swing to see what they're like. But yeah, no, very exciting. And then other than that, just flat out with work at the moment. So yeah, very boring. But that'll wrap us up for this week. So obviously we'll be back next week looking at all the games and seeing how wrong we were about our predictions and whatnot. But for now, it's bye from myself. It's bye from Sean.
Bye.
This has been all four quarters. Thanks for listening, and we'll chat to you next week.